Hi, Nicole Johnson from the Baby Sleep site here today, and today we'll be talking about the Ferber Method. What is the Ferber Method? Well, the Ferber Method is a sleep training strategy that you're going to allow your baby to learn how to fall asleep on their own. Now, why do we want babies to do that? Well, there's something called a sleep association. We all have sleep associations. I sleep on a mattress, on a pillow, with a blanket, and if I woke up at 2 in the morning and my pillow was gone, I would wake up more fully, look for my pillow. I might even nudge my husband and say, hey, have you seen my pillow? Because that's how I associate going to sleep. And while I can learn to sleep without a pillow, because that's how I fell asleep, then when I wake up in the middle of the night, if the pillow's gone, I'm going to wake up more fully. Similarly, with our babies, if you're rocking your baby to sleep, as I did, or feeding your baby to sleep, as I also did, they might wake up an hour or 2 hours later in order to get that sleep association recreated. So with the Ferber Method, essentially you want to put your baby down awake so that your baby can learn how to fall asleep on their own. But if they're used to being rocked to sleep or fed to sleep, then they might cry or they're going to be upset. They're going to be tired, frustrated. They won't understand why you're not feeding or rocking them to sleep. And so what the Ferber Method does is it essentially gives your baby space to learn a new skill while also having you check in. So there are a variety of different sleep training methods. There are some gentler methods where you don't leave the baby to cry. You stay in the room with them. With the traditional Ferber Method, you're supposed to leave the room, but you can also make adjustments to the Ferber Method by staying in the room. But essentially with this method, you put your baby down awake after doing a bedtime routine like normal, and then you give them some time to unwind and fall asleep. If they start to fuss or cry, then you set a timer. Typically what we do is for the first interval, we set it for 3 minutes. Give your baby 3 minutes to fall asleep on their own. If they're not crying, give them more time. If they are crying, then you go to them, soothe them. Some people choose not to pick them up. Some babies get very irate if you don't pick them up. So you would pick up your baby, soothe them a bit, put them down awake to try again. And essentially, the thing to keep in mind is that none of us really learn something the first try. I mean, yes, some people are very talented at learning to, ride a bike on the first try, but for the most part, most of us will have some failed attempts. So the first thing to kind of get in your mind is that your baby will have some failed attempts, and that's okay. You give them 3 minutes, let them try. Then when you put them down the second time, now you give them 5 minutes before you go soothe them. Give them a little bit more time to try, fail, and then eventually your goal is that they succeed. Now, once you soothe them again, you put them back down, or you can soothe them crib side, and then you'll wait another 8 to 10 minutes for the next interval. Usually on the first night, we wait 3 minutes for the first interval, 5 minutes for the second interval, and then 8 to 10 minutes for every interval after that until they fall asleep. Now, what if they're not asleep and it's been 30 minutes or 40 minutes? Do you keep going? How long should you keep going? That's a very good question. Usually what we'll typically do 45 minutes to an hour of sleep coaching, and then we'll usually take a 20-minute break and then try again. Every situation's a bit different. I work one-on-one with families, so I ask a lot of questions pertaining to the baby's temperament, the personality, the schedule. A lot of factors can dictate how long your baby might be crying. We definitely want to set them up for success and look at sleep from a holistic standpoint. So we try to kind of rule things out first before we even start sleep training, because sleep training is really kind of the last resort, the last step in fixing sleep problems. So keep that in mind. But for the most part, we'll do sleep training for 45 minutes to an hour, take a 20-minute break, and then try again. That's our typical fashion. Some people choose to do 30-minute attempts. A lot of babies, I would say, fall asleep in the first 20 to 30 minutes, so you don't have to do multiple attempts. But my baby, especially if my baby was easy, I wouldn't even have the baby sleep site, right? So for him, he was definitely more of a strong-willed type, very spirited, persistent, intense. He would cry pretty hard, so I tried to really do a more hands-on method with him. So your baby's temperament and personality will definitely play into it, as well as age. An 18-month-old is definitely stronger willed usually than a 6-month-old. And then a 6-month-old isn't sitting up or pulling up, while a 10-month-old might be pulling up, standing in the crib. And then what do you do? So there's a lot of different variables when it comes to sleep coaching your baby. But with the Ferber method, it's a nice mix of giving your baby space, but then being there to soothe. If the crying is too intense for you, then maybe you need to try a gentler method, and the Ferber method isn't the right fit. And then for some babies, they get really upset if you kind of tease them by soothing them and then stopping, soothing, stopping. Typically then the Ferber method isn't always the best method for those types of babies. But keep in mind, no matter what method you choose, the first 3 nights are usually the most difficult, no matter what method, no matter your baby's temperament and personality. So with the Ferber method, typically every night after the first night, you're increasing the intervals by 3 to 5 minutes each. So maybe on night 2, you soothe the baby at 5 minutes, 8 minutes, and then every 10 minutes, for example. On night 3, you might choose 8 minutes, 10 minutes, and every 15 minutes. Typically, you're supposed to increase the intervals every day. Some people will just kind of stick to what they're comfortable. Some people don't feel comfortable going past 20 minutes, for example. Typically with Ferber, you're kind of mostly done sleep coaching within the first 5 to 7 days, I would say. I typically tell people to try to be consistent for at least a week. You need to reevaluate and kind of know if things are getting better or worse. If things start to get worse, it might not be the right method, or maybe you haven't addressed something different. So you need to kind of keep that in mind as well. But also keep in mind there are lots of stories of people who finish sleep training in 2 or 3 nights, and those are great stories, and I'm always so happy for those parents. But there are some of us like me who aren't done in just a few nights. We have more challenging babies. They're more strong-willed. My son is now 16 years old. He's still strong-willed, but that's just how he is, and he's always been that way. Harder to parent, but it's going to be great for him when he's an adult. So just that. Don't be disheartened if your baby is a little more challenging. You're definitely not alone. Some babies just need more time to master sleep training or falling asleep on their own. The other thing to keep in mind is in Ferber's book, he talks about not feeding your baby at night after 3 to 4 months old. However, in my 14 years as a sleep consultant, there are many babies who still need to eat at night after that age, and they simply can't go 11 to 12 hours without eating. Now, some people will do a dream feed, which I'll put a link in the bottom of this video about dream feeding. That is one possibility you can consider. Also, I work with many families, especially breastfeeding moms, who still feed at night, and they still are fine with sleep feeding once or twice a night. They just don't want to be up every hour. And Ferber can still work with those babies as well. And typically we'll set some times for feedings. So for example, we might start with 2 feedings at night, depending on the age of your baby. Definitely keep that in mind, that you want to set feeding times appropriate for the age of your baby. And we'll set 2 feeding times. We'll do Ferber method throughout the night. What typically I do is I work on bedtime for a few nights and then add on the night wakings that are not feeding times. So let's say that you're planning to feed your baby at 11 and 3 a.m. For example, then you'll wait until those time to feed them. Any other time, you'll do the Ferber method. If it's a feeding time, you'll feed them and then put them down awake and continue the Ferber method. So that way you're being consistent throughout the night. Now, some people want to ask, what about the Ferber method for naps? Well, you can use it for naps as well. We typically do, again, we do 45 minutes to an hour of sleep training. If they're not asleep, you get up for an hour, take a break at nap time, and then try again. The schedule goes a bit out the window when you're first doing the Ferber method for naps, but that's temporary. Now, nap training generally takes 1 to 2 weeks on average, so it's not quite as easy as night times for some babies. So just keep that in mind as well. You might be at it a bit longer than at nighttime. You might have some great success within a few nights at night, but then for naps, you might have to give it 1 to 2 weeks just to, make consistent progress. Some days might be better than others. Timing with the schedule can make a big difference as well. So I think that's it for the Ferber method today. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'm happy to answer. Like and subscribe to our channel so I can keep doing more videos for you. And I hope this helped. Happy sleeping. Have a great day.